Good day everyone. So today's video we will discuss about the comparing economic system. So these are the reporters, starting with Christine Marie Manlosa, followed by Elaine Jane Mogello and Joylo Mirafuentes. So what is socialism? When we say socialism, it is a political and economic theory of social organization which advocates that the means of production, distribution, and exchange should be owned or regulated by the community as a whole. Socialism is, broadly speaking, a political and economic system in which property and the means of production are owned in common, typically controlled by the state or government. Socialism is based on the idea that common or public ownership of resources and means of production leads to a more equal society. The idea is not just political equality but social and economic as well. Next is ownership in socialism. Ownership of the most of the means of production is public rather than private. The government, not the individual, is the center of the economy. Common ownership refers to holding the asset of an organization, enterprise, or community indivisibly rather than in the names of the individual's members or group of members as common property. Socialism is a populist economic and political system based on public ownership, also known as collective or common ownership of the means of production. Those means includes the machinery, tools, and factories used to produce goods that aim to direct satisfy human needs. So next is democratic socialism. Under the system, people have the basic human rights and have some control over the government official through free election. Democratic socialism is a political philosophy that supports political economy and some form of socially owned economy, with a particular emphasis on economic democracy, workplace democracy, and worker self-management within a market socialist economy or an alternative form of decentralized planned socialist economy. Democratic socialists argue that capitalism is inherently incompatible with the values of freedom, equality, and solidarity, and that this ideal can only be achieved through the realization of a socialist society. Democratic socialism is defined as having a socialist economy in which that means of production are socially and collectively owned or controlled alongside a liberal democratic political system of government.
So for the socialism's strength or the advantages of a socialism, here we have guaranteed minimum standards of a living cradle to grave. And also it events differences makes people moral equal. It also workers enjoy full fruit of labor and full employment, and of purity in production is a gear towards the not-profit. So according to the socialistic system, each person's guarantee access to basic goods, and it will also not be able to contribute. As a result, the system helps to minimize to poverty levels in the society. So for the socialism weaknesses, we have here the complicates government or bureaucracy, robs human incentives, too much government control, individual freedom is secondary the state needs, and lastly, the high taxation and redistribution of wealth. So for the key points here for disadvantages of socialism include slow economic growth, less entrepreneurial opportunities and competitions, and a potential lack of motivation by individuals due to observed rewards. For the history came about after the industrial revolutions. So socialism arose largely in response to the economic social consequence of the industrial revolution. There is an abundance of literature that attests to the dramatic way in which the industrialization of Europe affected the daily lives of individuals, particularly the working classes. For an industrializations, population is divided between a bourgeoisie and a proletariat. So in a bourgeoisie refers to the capitalist who own the means of a production and the most of the wealth in society, whereas the proletariat refers to wage earners who do not own the production and most sell their labor to survive. For Karl Marx began to criticize capitalism. So he has the two thoughts. So first is the change will come through the violence of a rapid revolution, and the second is change will come through peaceful needs. So we have here the socialist changes, nationalization, the welfare states or social programs, the high taxation, and lastly the commons economy. So first, the socialist changes define social change as changes in human interaction and relationships that transforms cultural and social institution. And the second one here is the nationalization. Nationalization is the process of taking privately controlled companies, industries, or and assets and putting them on already controlled in a government. The third is the welfare state or a social program. So a welfare state is a form of government in which the state protects and promotes the economic and social beings in citizens, and it also based on a principle equals of the opportunities. And and the fourth one is the high taxation. So conventional beliefs that taxing entails a higher welfare cost than taxing consumption. And lastly, the command economy. Command economy is economic system in which means production, publicity owned, and economic activities in controlled by central authority did assign quantitative production goals and allots of raw materials in productivity enterprises.
Socialist countries. So first is Northern Europe. So the parts of the Northern Europe is Sweden and Finland. So the second socialist countries is France. And the third is some South American countries like Venezuela. Communism, a political system in which the government owns all property and is ruled by one party, with complete control over the economy. No private property will exist. Every person will work for the welfare of all. So, the communism, most property are owned and controlled by the state rather than individual citizens. Socialism is that all citizens share equally in economic resources as allocated by a democratically elected governments. So the pro and con of socialism. The pro is all share equally the benefits of production. The second is no winners and losers. So the con is no competition. The second is efficiency goes down, and the last is high taxes. So I have here other pro and con of socialism. The pro, improvement in social stability, assurance of supply with important goods for daily life. The last is assurance of access to medical facilities. So the con is currency problem. The second is people may get lazy. And the third is People may lose the incentive to work hard. Next is the pro and con of communism. So the first pro is full employment. The second is citizens get what they need. So the con is government decides rewards. The second is few luxuries. So I have other pro and con of communism. The first pro is assurance of supply with medical equipment. The second is food supply is assured. The third is enhancement of the education infrastructure. And the last is may improve the overall safety level in a country. So the con is fewer incentives to work hard. Second is self-fulfillment may not be possible. The third is international trade relationships may suffer. And the fourth is restriction of information flows.
So that will be the end of our discussion. Thank you for listening.